There he lay on the ground, dead. And you are Adam or you are Eve. Can you imagine the absolute horror that had to be going on in their hearts? Can you imagine them thinking back to that day when they grabbed that fruit off of the tree and plunged the world into sin? Relationships were not supposed to be like this at all. Relationships were supposed to be this incredible gift from an incredible God where people could intermingle with people and most importantly could be with God face to face. And now we've got one of our sons who's killed our other son. It must have been like a primal scream inside of them saying, Lord, please fix this. And of course, as you track it out down through the years, relationships have been one big train wreck after another. Nations have fought against nations. People groups have fought against people groups. Families have feuded with other families. Congregation members struggle with other congregation members. Marriages tank. Fathers, mothers don't treat children properly. Lord, fix this. This is not the way relationships should be. Amen? Amen. So what do you need to fix a relationship? You need a counselor. And you need one who's really good. A wonderful counselor, if you will. And that's exactly what God promises here in Isaiah chapter 9. When do we call counselors into our lives? Well, obviously, we call counselors into our lives when we have a relationship issue. But I'd also suggest we don't call counselors into our lives over just any relationship. You know, if I've got some acquaintance and this acquaintance and I have a bit of a disagreement, I'm not going to call a counselor. That relationship just isn't that important to me. But if my marriage is on the rocks, if I'm really struggling with my kids or with my parents, if I've got a huge issue with my boss, I may call in a counselor because those relationships are really important. And I want those relationships to work. Well, how about the most important relationship which you have? The relationship with your God. Ultimately, that's the one that matters because God has the ability to send us either to heaven or to hell. And the unfortunate reality is that you and I have made a train wreck out of that relationship too. You think about it just in regards to our own human relationships. How oftentimes haven't we dealt with people selfishly instead of selflessly? How often haven't we talked to people in anger and frustration rather than in kindness and with words of encouragement? How often we've looked to others to fill our needs rather than looking for how we could fill the needs of others. Relationship-wise, we have made a mess out of it. And in making a mess out of it with the relationships we have here, we are in turn train wrecking our relationship with God, the most important relationship that we have. Oh Lord, fix this. To us a child is born, to us a son is given. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor. Luther has this to say about the word wonderful. What is more wonderful than that God and man are one person? Who will ever comprehend this mystery? The creature is the creator. And the creator is the creature. And all for what reason? Because that's what it took to heal the relationship between us and God. We needed the creator to become the creature, because the only way that the relationship between us and our God could be healed was if Jesus went to the cross and repaired that relationship. And that is exactly what he did. Wonderful. And oh, that wonderful counselor doesn't just come to us once, but he keeps on coming back. Every time there's a baptism, the wonderful counselor is at work, healing people's hearts. Whenever we hear the words of God, the wonderful counselor is filling our hearts with peace. Whenever we gather around his table, the wonderful counselor is pouring his healing love into our hearts and into our lives, which in turn gives us the strength to try to reflect that love to our relationships around us. Wonderful Counselor, who has repaired the most important relationship that you have. And where back in Eden, Adam and Eve torched and train wrecked our relationship with God and got kicked out of God's presence, someday you and I will be back into the proverbial Garden of Eden, eating of the tree of life. Because the wonderful counselor came and repaired the most important relationship you have. His name will be called Wonderful Counselor. Amen?